Boom. All right. Bill Barheit here. Let's do this. Welcome to Money Talks. As always, much to talk about, much going on in crypto land. So I've got some news I'll talk about. I'm going to share some price updates. We've got some really interesting feedback on Cardano from our interview with Charles. If you missed that, definitely go back to our YouTube channel and watch it later, not now. And we will also be posting some highlights from that as we go. And we've got some more guests that are going to be coming on in the coming weeks. I'm really excited about that. We're trying to take it to another level with Money Talks, and I'm really excited about what the team has prepared and has in the works for all of us. That actually is marrying with some really super exciting announcements that we've got coming up for the rest of the year. I'm actually in a team offsite. We're actually physically together for the first time in a long time, the entire team, and we're going over all the awesome stuff that we're going to be bringing to you in the coming months. And the team is just crazy excited. It can't come fast enough. So I'm going to get to your questions already being teed up. Welcome everyone. And yeah, I've got some product demos and a couple of product announcements. So let me get to just a couple of quick comments about what I'm seeing in the market. So this morning, we have options expiration on tap. A lot of questions about what that means and why options expirations can affect asset prices and what options expirations explicitly mean for Bitcoin and crypto. So let me roughly explain what that means. So in options, you have call options, which is basically prepaying the ability to buy something at a certain price in the future, and then you have put options, which is the ability to potentially buy an insurance contract to sell something at a specific price in the future. So if you think the price is peaked, you can actually buy a put option, which gives you the ability to sell it, let's say at that price. And if the price falls, you actually can pocket the difference. So let me explain what this whole options expiration means. Historically, there's an imbalance always between the amount of call options in existence on an asset at any given time and the number of put options in existence. And you can often refer to that as sentiment being bearish or bullish. More call options tends to point to a bullish sentiment, and more put options tends to point to bearish sentiment. However, in terms of price action, it actually can represent the opposite. So in other words, let's say that there's a ceiling at like 50,000 where there's a whole bunch of call options. Now, when you read the tea leaves, like I just described, that sounds like there's bullish sentiment. But what actually happens in addition to that is those call options actually act as a ceiling artificially on price, meaning that it's going to be very hard because of all those call options to push the price higher. Okay, and there's a lot of reasons why. I won't get into it, but effectively, it's all we need to know is it's historically is proven fact that the vast majority of the time, when you have a significantly higher percentage of call options at a certain price, the price that's closest to the current price will act as a ceiling on price, and it will be very difficult, especially if it's a psychological kind of barrier for people, like a nice round number like 50,000 to push through. So when those options expire, that ceiling is often removed, okay, which can be very, very bullish when you're in a macro bull trend like we are now. And the opposite can also be true. So if you're in a bear trend or in a pullback, and there's a lot of put options at a certain price on the way down, that can often act as a floor in price, okay? And so once that floor is removed, often we can see prices continue the downward trend. So it all kind of plays together with these accumulation phases you've heard me talk about, which I'll show you in a second, what's going on there. And it all kind of basically is information that you can use in the short term to make technical decisions about what's happening in price. So those of you who are asking about what options expirations really means for price action, that's one perspective. The other perspective, of course, is that we're now on to the next month's options. And anybody who had an option to buy Bitcoin at that price, if the price was above that, if it was below that price, the options are going to go unused, expired. Okay, it's like buying an insurance contract that says if your house burns down, I'm going to give you the value of your house, but it expires tomorrow. And if your house doesn't burn down by tomorrow, the insurance contract is then null and void. Think of an options contract in those terms. Okay. At the same time, we had our wonderful Fed Chairman Powell, I believe via this Jackson Hole this Jackson Hole conference, where all the bigwigs get together and carve up the world a little finer between themselves. And I think their time is just about expired, thank God. But anyway, his comments were super interesting. He used my favorite T word today, which you've probably seen me rant about on Twitter, referring to current inflationary pressures as transitory, whatever the hell that means, being facetious. Transitory, in his opinion, or their opinion, basically means that the effects of higher inflation are probably going to be short-lived. I don't agree with that. I think that there's so many moving parts to inflation that you have to dig in another level to really understand what's going on. Now, if you're a little older like me, I'm not quite old enough to remember all of the effects, but I do remember when I was a little kid, my parents waiting online for hours at a time, and this is in New York City, New Jersey area, to buy gasoline. Hours, all right? This is when we had the oil embargo in the 70s, and when Jimmy Carter became president, we had double digits inflation, super high unemployment, which led to Ford losing the election to Carter, and it just got worse and worse and worse. So if maybe those of you who are older than me might remember this firsthand. I remember the gas lines mostly, but I also, have read enough to know what happened. And what happened is what we ultimately called now stagflation. Well, what the hell is stagflation? And why am I bringing this up now? Well, I'll cut to the chase. I'm bringing this up now because I think stagflation is a real potential outcome here from a certain point of view. And by a certain point of view, I mean that if you're working in tech and the normal kind of deflationary pressures on exponentially growing technology are your world, you may not experience this firsthand, but everyone else who doesn't work in these kind of high tech arenas is highly likely to experience firsthand the negative effects of stagflation and inflation. And stagflation is basically a combination of two concepts: stagnation, economic stagnation, when economic growth rates either stall, but at the same time, unemployment and inflation rates are high. Now, right now, unemployment in the US is on the way down because we're coming out of this recovery. But with this Delta stuff going on, lockdowns coming on again, it looks like, we've got a president and a Congress that's completely asleep at the wheel. I actually think that we could end up with falling employment numbers outside of high tech, right? So I'm actually creating a tale of two cities for you. We have high tech, exponentially growing companies, and we have everyone else. And I think we're going to see significant unemployment continue or raise its head in the everyone else category, and high tech jobs are going to continue to boom. And that's why we're going to see this kind of stagflation on the one side, and basically another side in high tech that just doesn't care, right? If you're an hourly worker and the cost of a used car has doubled, for example, or the price of rentals in cities, home rentals, has gone up 40% in 12 months, you're in big trouble, right? You can't afford a car, you can't afford your rent, and at the same time, hourly wages have stagnated. Why am I even talking about all this? So ultimately, I think that the intersection of the macro picture and where crypto is going is super important for all of us, okay? Because not only is it going to change the banking system, which is why Abra is here, but it's going to change the monetary system ultimately, right? That's why all of these wealthy pundits are so excited about Bitcoin and Ethereum and are even talking about Cardano now. People who didn't know what Cardano was a month ago are now on CNBC talking about Cardano, right? And there's a reason for this, right? The structure of our economy is changing and it's not good, right? So it's not just about an inflation hedge. It's about a hedge against the system, meaning if the system breaks, what are we going to replace it with? And I think this is why everybody who's not even in crypto kind of has an inkling that, hey, I remember when the Remember when those Wall Street protesters were setting up tents, protesting the 1%, and they couldn't really explain exactly why they were pissed, but they knew that something was wrong. And I think that that's part of why people are so excited about crypto right now, right? They know something's wrong. And look, I think that this is going to grow. The movement is going to grow. So when I hear people talk about inflation is transitory, it's an oversimplification and it's mostly nonsense. In other words, they actually don't know what's going to happen. They have no idea what's going to happen. But I can tell you that you can't keep printing money and expect that you're going to basically be in this 2% inflation, what they call normal growth cycle. It's just not going to happen. It's not possible. Okay. Again, my favorite analogy is the baseball card analogy, right? So I used to collect baseball cards as a kid. A friend who had a Mickey Mantle card, or Mickey Mantle rookie card is worth a lot of money. Or this Honus Wagner card, maybe you've heard of if you're American, which is worth millions of dollars. Okay. Why is it worth millions of dollars? Well, it's very old, super rare, right? And hard to get as a result. Now, what if you found out that this card that was worth millions of dollars was actually only one of 100,000 tomorrow? Well, it would stand to reason that the value of that Honus Wagner card would fall significantly. Okay. That's just the way collectibles work. But people don't think that way about money, but they should. Okay. And if they did, they would have a totally different perspective on what sound money means, and then ultimately what sound banking means. All right. So in crypto news, Goldman basically is going to start offering Bitcoin futures to institutional clients. And Citibank followed suit and said that they were going to start offering Bitcoin futures to institutional clients. And they've been actively recruiting traders to be able to offer that product. So futures are another derivative, just like options. Futures are often easier for regulated entities to offer instead of underlying crypto because they're more regulated. So in other words, Bitcoin itself, because it's a commodity, is actually not regulated in the United States because we don't regulate commodities, gold, oil. Derivative contracts on commodities, derivatives on oil, derivatives on gold, derivatives on Bitcoin, such as futures, are regulated. And so that actually makes it easier for banks that have to ask for permission to go to the bathroom to offer certain products. Okay. So that's why you'll hear more about banks potentially offering derivatives like futures faster than they may offer the underlying asset itself. On the surface, it makes no sense. But when you dig in a level and realize, like I said, they have to ask for permission to cross the street, asking for permission to offer a derivative is easier because they know who to ask. Okay. NFTs are going nuts this week. I wish I had some photos to show you that I've been looking at. I mean, rocks. People are buying NFTs of rocks. A lot of my friends have basically been sharing these memes. I honestly haven't had time this week to get in on the conversation. I'm so busy, but everyone is going NFT crazy. If you've been following Solana, we don't list Solana yet. I hope we will soon, but the price action there has been nuts. I'll show you the charts there in a second. Facebook, David Marcus, friend of mine, a good guy, mentioned that they're exploring NFT support in their until now vaporware Navi digital wallet. Sorry, but it's been vaporware for 2 years, and I don't know if it's ever going to be released. But he's already talking about the next version, and we haven't even gotten the first version yet. But he's talking about NFTs. Microsoft got some patents on crypto token creation. Super interesting. If people have questions about that, I can dig in a little bit more. Tether, really interesting. So Tether tends to act somewhat as a leading indicator for what's happening, similar to what's happening with supply shocks, right? So when you hear me say supply shock, I'm talking about potentially crypto leaving exchanges, because then there's less crypto to buy, less crypto to trade. More Tether being printed usually means people are going to be moving money into crypto, because that's the biggest use case for Tether right now is trading. So the more cash that you have in Tether or USDC, the higher the chance that it's going to get moved into crypto at some point. Obviously, Bitcoin, therefore, getting the biggest benefit of that. All right, so let's go to the charts. I see we've got a lot of questions being teed up. By the way, don't forget to click the subscribe button on YouTube, and that helps us here. We've got a lot of new subscribers the last few weeks. We've taken this over, I think, over 16,000, most we've ever had. And by the way, Charles, that video, thanks again, Charles Hoskinson, huge viewership last week, and we're going to keep doing that. It's a lot of work, but I love it. So, all right. So let me bring up the trusty charts here. I got to do my screen share. All right, Mr. Wizard, let me know if you don't. Let me get it up first. Hold on one second. Charts, and I can just find it. There we go. All right. So hopefully you see my chart. So let's start with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin got a nice pump this morning. So if you see here on the right side of the screen, this is the 1 hour chart, this big green line, that big green candle. That was actually during Chairman Powell's speech this morning, where he used my favorite T word, transitory, and it just pumped, right? I mean, because there was no, I guess, negative news, everybody just took it as a bullish sign, meaning it was more of the same. We can expect more government printing, more handouts, more money in circulation. Huge percentage of the stimulus money last year made its way into Robinhood and stocks and crypto, Doge, et cetera, et cetera. We're starting to see meme stocks rear their head again. GameStop and what was it, the movie AMC, whatever, all basically spiking again. So I expect, look, so we're kind of bouncing off that 50K area again. I suspect we're going to go sideways for a few more days, maybe a couple of weeks, but then I fully expect the supply shock to kick in again. So let me talk about supply shock before I come back to Ethereum. All right. So here is basically the historical correlation between price / accumulation and net inflows or outflows on exchanges. So let me explain what you're looking at. This is from Willy Woo's most recent newsletter. You see here where it says peak accumulation. This is basically the rubber band winding up for the next big move up. And you can see under that the purple line, which basically points to kind of a neutral net inflow and outflow, meaning there's a little bit of balance. And as soon as those outflows start again, boom, another leg up, right? Outflows. I don't know if you can see my mouse, down, boom, another leg up. And it looks like we're entering another period of peak accumulation. Now, what Willie said, and I totally agree with this, is the structure of the Bitcoin market is breaking down. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean to say the structure of the Bitcoin market is breaking down? Historically, Bitcoin has worked in these 4-year cycles that function according to halvenings. The halvening is when the payout for new Bitcoin being mined gets reduced in half, which happens every 4 years. It's based on the number of block cycles, but it more or less happens every 4 years. Now, what Willie is saying, and I agree with this, is that the structure here has changed because there's so much Bitcoin moving out of the system, right, into long-term storage and long-term holders, that it looks like what normally would be a down year next year is actually gearing up to be a big uptrend. And Dan Held has often referred to this as his, I think he calls it a super cycle. And if you don't follow Dan on Twitter, another great guy, also has a really interesting newsletter. He's talked about this super cycle many, many times. And if they're both right, I mean, we're talking about potentially 10 to 20x upside for the crypto markets led by Bitcoin, Ethereum, maybe Cardano, Solana now. So if this peak accumulation phase that he's talking about comes to fruition, which will take a couple of months to kind of wind up over the next few months, we get to that 55K range, let's say in late September, we wind up a little bit more, up and down a little bit, and then Q4 going into Q2 next year could make Q4 of last year, where we went from, what was it, like 8,000 to 30,000, looked like child's play. All right. So that's really exciting for me. All right. The other thing he showed us is, which is really interesting, is this heat map of long-term investors. Let me explain what you're looking at here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So the red that you see is a concentration of selling, so the red bubbles, and the green bubbles is a concentration of long-term buyers. Okay, and where we are today is more or less in this upper right corner. So you can see that once Bitcoin got down and up here where these red bubbles are, that's kind of the late May highs. And then you see that May 12th to 19th week where we had a big red bubble sell-off. Ever since we got down to that 32, 33 range, the bubbles started turning green until we had this little capitulation move at right around 30K. Because people were afraid that once we broke 30K, all hell would break loose. And it didn't happen, which was awesome. That's what a capitulation move is. So now look at all this green, right? And a lot of that Bitcoin is now being moved off chain. We had a scenario about a week ago where it looked like money was quickly moving on chain. And that led to the sell-off that we saw yesterday. And Willie called it. I mean, he basically called it at like, I don't know, it was like 5 in the morning for me. And at like 7 in the morning, the sell-off started. It was eerie how fast or how accurate his prediction was. But today he came out and said, and accurately, I think, that it looks like that sell-off happened fast enough where it's done. And it looks like we're entering an accumulation phase, and the market is looking unbelievably bullish, where we could enter this super cycle going into next year. And that normal cycle of halvenings, which would normally point to a down year next year, is actually not happening at all, which is amazing. All right. Ethereum. So now Ethereum was basically mirroring the Bitcoin supply shock, but right now there's a little bit of a bullish divergence where we're seeing a little bit of a net outflow on Ethereum. I suspect this is going to be short-lived, just given the fact that Ethereum has now become mostly deflationary, right? We're burning a significant amount of Ethereum. My understanding is we've burned hundreds of millions of dollars in Ethereum already. And so I suspect you're going to see a similar supply shock story for Ethereum, given the amount of staking going on, the amount of Ethereum being burned. But in the short term, it looks like we're going to enter a new accumulation phase for Ethereum as well. All of this, you know, if you don't follow the detailed technical analysis, basically means, bring up the Ethereum chart, that you know, Ethereum and Bitcoin are all looking really bullish in the midterm. And so buy and hold. I don't recommend trying to day trade your way through this right now for Bitcoin and Ethereum. Maybe I would say certain altcoins, if you're interested in, you know, might make more sense. You know, you want to get in and out over a few week period, but I'm just constantly buying more Bitcoin right now. Okay. All right. So before I get to some questions, we got to talk about Cardano. So when I interviewed Charles last week, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we were at, I think we were about $2.60, and Cardano peaked at $2 and let's say roughly $2.90. And right now it's at about 283. So this is basically an unbelievable run, right? We're not quite at the May, the highs yet, which I think would have, you know, Cardano reaching $3. But it is, you know, by far of the big L1, you know, protocols, the most bullish of all of them right now. And obviously the sentiment here is significant because of the pending smart contracts launch. And if you missed last week's interview with Charles Hoskinson, I strongly recommend that you go back and watch that. He is super interesting guy. He talks about raising bison and a lot of his personal interests. And we compacted what, you know, I think could have been a 10-hour discussion into a quick and very consumable 15, 20-minute conversation. Okay, so Cardano really bullish. I think what's interesting right now is that while most NFTs are still running on Ethereum, Solana seems to be getting a lot of coverage right now as a potential competitor, and they're pushing very hard to get into that space. And you can see, let me switch to the daily chart on Solana, which is up basically since the August lows. over 3.5x. So that's a 250+% move in basically a month, which is just nuts. And again, I think they're getting a halo effect from a lot of what's going on in the crypto space. Okay. Hopefully we'll be able to bring you Solana support very soon. All right. So let's see. Why don't I take a break from that and answer some questions? Let me stop this. All right. So a couple of questions. First question from last week. Is Abra actually launching 2FA that you talked about last week? Yes, 2FA is now live. So let me explain 2FA. What is 2FA? 2FA stands for two-factor authentication. Now, in the case of Abra, it's actually, you might even say it's actually three-factor authentication, but we'll stick to the normal terminology. All right. Two-factor authentication basically means that whenever you do a transaction, even if you've typed in your passcode or PIN code in the case of Abra to the app, you need to get a one-time code from your authenticator app that's bound to Abra. Okay. And that code only lasts for about 30 seconds. So if you don't have that authenticator app, you can't use or can't execute that transaction. And that's another layer of protection. So that let's say somebody steals your phone, they type in 10,000 combinations and get access to your Abra wallet before you've actually contacted support. If they don't have your 2FA app, and you shouldn't put it on the same phone, then they won't be able to withdraw your crypto. All right. So it's a very important layer of protection that I strongly recommend that you use. So let me show you, let me share my screen here. I'm going to bring up the app. I figured out why it wasn't working last week. Zoom changed the way it does screen sharing. So I'm going to bring this up here. Oop, lost the connection. And of course, now it's not working. All right, so let me try this one more time. Oh. Of course, it's not cooperating again. All right, so while this is coming up, okay, so you should see my screen now. So I'm going to bring up the Abra app. All right, so in the app, you click on the hamburger menu in the upper left corner, and you see where it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows down, wallet security. So wallet security, you're now going to see 3 items in there. Before you had view recovery phrase, and change PIN. Now you have this other item called two-factor authentication. Okay. Now, what you want to do when you go into this screen, it's going to be off. It's going to be grayed out. So what you're going to do is you're going to toggle, you're going to press that button to turn that green, and you're going to have two-factor authentication turned on at that point. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to use your Authy. I use Authy, but you can use whatever app you want. Google Authenticator, Microsoft has an authenticator app, and you're going to walk through that process. If you've used any other app like Facebook or Twitter or other trading apps or banking apps that support 2FA, you've already used this, so you know how it works. Now, my recommendation is do not put the authenticator app on the same device. Meaning if you're using Abra on a smartphone, put the authenticator or Authy on your laptop, or get a throwaway phone like a cheap Android phone and keep that separately. Keep it under lock and key, except when you want to do a withdrawal. Okay, so we use 2FA for withdrawals. Okay, if you're trading, you don't need to use 2FA because the money is not leaving your account. We're only using 2FA right now for withdrawals because that's when you can lose your money. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about that in the meantime, but that is that's Abra's support for 2FA. All right. Let's see, other questions. Do we need 2FA for trading? No, you don't. We're not supporting 2FA for trading because the money is not leaving the phone. So it doesn't really make sense to do that. Good question. And we're focusing the 2FA explicitly on getting money off the device, which is where the biggest potential security risk is. And we're not turning it on by default because some of you don't have the Authy app set up yet, but I strongly encourage you after the show, upgrade your app to the latest version, install Authy, get 2FA turned on, and you'll be good to go. All right, let's see. So when Digibyte for Abra earn? Yeah, I get this question all the time. So when we add assets to Abra earn, let me go over here to the demo app. So you see we support Bitcoin at 3.15%, Ethereum, Pax, which is now called the Pax USD, I believe. They just changed the name this week, so you'll be updating the app for that. Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin. It's all based upon borrow interest. And so if there's no market demand, no institutional demand to borrow the assets, we can't pay yield on it, right? Or sometimes we use DeFi liquidity pools, for example, but in general, it's mostly lending. So until there is market demand on the lending side, we cannot responsibly pay yield. So Peter and others that have asked, I sincerely appreciate the question. It's okay to keep asking. We'll keep looking at the market. We know Digibyte is super popular, but so far we haven't gotten the demand. All right. Hello, Cecilia from Sweden. I don't see too many folks from Sweden, so thanks for the shout outs. Yeah, I agree. We really try to be transparent here, Mongo. So I appreciate the comments. Let's see, a few folks from the Philippines. Baguetti says he's worried about Cardano. Wonder why you're worried. But I actually am super bullish. Look, we're due for a pullback on Cardano. Maybe that's why you're worried. But I think that right now I'm really bullish. So Trevor asks, will Abra add backup recovery codes for 2FA? Trevor, right now, no, it's not in the plans. That's why I strongly recommend that you use an app like Authy or the new version of Google Authenticator that encrypts your 2FA codes into the cloud and that you can move them across devices in a very secure way. Let's see. So Robert is asking about Bank to the Future. Robert, I can't comment on that on this channel. So you'll have to use the Bank to the Future channel for that. Is Cardano Earn coming? Dave, yes, Cardano Earn is coming. We talked about that last week. I was hoping it would be live before this week's show. We are finishing our testing, and my hope is that it will be live before next week's show. So you can start depositing your Cardano if you haven't already into Abra, into the Abra trade account, and you'll be able to move it over to Abra Earn the moment it goes live, and we'll be announcing the yield, and you'll earn with daily compounding, just like you can on Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I'll be moving my Cardano over to Abra Earn, all right, as well. And Ted Nugent, cool name. Ted Nugent asks, is Abrabarro coming to Canada? So Ted, yes, we're planning to bring it to Canada. I know we're working through the legal process for that. I don't have an exact date, but yes, I believe that we are going to be bringing Abrabarro to Canada as well. Our goal is to get it live globally, but Canada is definitely high on the list. So let's see, when will we support Lightning? Jeff, great question. So I have spent a lot of time on Lightning the last few weeks. So I am super bullish on Lightning as a technology. It is phenomenal. The progress that's been made, a lot of the early concerns I had have been addressed. It really does feel like an extension and a real part of Bitcoin now, and not just an add-on like it felt like in the very early days. It really does feel like it's a core part of Bitcoin now. And so that's really a testament to some of the amazing engineers and developers that have been working on this for a long time. Now, I am definitely bullish on Lightning in the long term. I do have a lot of questions about the economic incentives to make Lightning work. One of the ingenious aspects, I mean, probably the most ingenious aspect of Bitcoin from a business perspective, is how it aligns all of the economic incentives for all of the players, the users, the people running nodes, the miners, all basically have their incentives aligned to do what's right for Bitcoin. it's not totally clear to me how the economic incentives will play out for nodes. Now, there are thousands of nodes currently running Lightning, but the amount of money in the system is obviously not enough yet to make it work like a global money transfer network, like a global Venmo or a global Western Union. That's the promise. Now, I think it's going to happen, even though I can't necessarily explain what those economic incentives are yet, but I think they're going to happen. I think a lot of those economic incentives will be people doing good in frontier markets, right? Maybe you read about the Cuba government this morning. I tweeted about it, mentioned that they're going, or said that they're going to support Bitcoin as a form of payment. Now, remember, when you use Bitcoin as a form of payment in Cuba or El Salvador, or I see folks in here from Guatemala, where we have a lot of customers at Abra, you can't just use layer one, which is normal Bitcoin on-chain transactions, to move Bitcoin around in small amounts. Because if the blocks get full again, which they will eventually, then it might cost you, $25 in mining fees or network fees to send $5 worth of Bitcoin. And obviously that's not a good way to use Bitcoin, or it doesn't make any sense. That's the promise of Lightning. Okay, so I think there will be more incentives to do this first in frontier markets where paying in Bitcoin makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, it would make a lot of sense right now if Lightning was a massive thing in North Africa, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in markets that are blocked in terms of OFAC sanctions, where they could use this domestically, and that makes sense to me, right? Because they have economic incentives to basically work around the existing banking system, right? In the U.S., the incentives are less, right? Now, our biggest incentive right now is that we want Bitcoin to succeed desperately, and so I can see us playing in the Lightning space. Sorry for the incredibly long answer to a very simple question, but I am bullish on Lightning. I hope it becomes part of Abra eventually, and we'll see what happens. Let's see. Mac asked why I didn't answer his question. Mac, I'm sorry. There's so many questions here. I must have missed your question. Feel free to retype it, and if it makes sense, I'm happy to answer. Can Abra have different options for doing deposits? McLeod asks. So we're constantly looking at different deposit options, and we have a team that does nothing but work on that. So if you have very specific deposit options that you think make sense for you, then please ask. All right. Let's see. Did Abra announce its valuation for its latest financing? I can't comment on that. So hopefully we'll have some interesting announcements there soon. Do I see Abra raising interest rates for native coins, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, anytime soon? Stanford, we don't obviously pre-announce rate raises or lowering of interest rates. It's all dependent upon the dynamics of the market. So let me give you a couple of scenarios that would point to rates changing. All right. So let's say that Bitcoin is rising very fast, that Bitcoin is going to 80,000. Okay. What's going to happen at that point is miners are going to be making a lot of money. They're going to be looking to expand their operations very quickly, right? And they need dollars to do that. They have to buy their custom ASICs, the computers. They have to buy, electrical facilities, physical facilities to put the computers in that are doing the mining. They need to pay for electricity, which is the biggest cost of this. So they're going to be looking to borrow a lot of cash using their Bitcoin as collateral. Okay, that's going to drive interest rates much, much higher. If that happens, that's my prediction, right? Meaning if Bitcoin is going higher like that. If we see Bitcoin become very volatile, right, there's going to be a lot of borrow demand for Bitcoin. Bitcoin was super volatile in Q1, right? And the price swings were very high. So the demand for borrowing Bitcoin became very, very high, which caused the rates to be much higher. Okay, DeFi, wrapped Bitcoin, and liquidity pool to take advantage of wrapped Bitcoin are actually creating interest rate opportunities for Bitcoin. Now, that may sound counterintuitive to the Bitcoin kind of maximalists to say, how can Ethereum, right, or Ethereum-based DeFi systems and smart contracts be causing or creating yield opportunities for Bitcoin? Well, it is. So there is a huge amount of Bitcoin right now, which is offline, right? In effectively in cold storage, which is now available on the Ethereum network via wrapped Bitcoin. And this is used in liquidity pools for trading Bitcoin versus other assets and is generating yield on those liquidity pools. And most of you who are in Abra Earn are getting the benefits of those liquidity pools, okay? Which is one of the ways we generate yield. So you should be very excited about that. Let's see. Use Crypto Today says, when will we be able to deposit from our bank account directly into USDC? And not, it's actually true USD right now, not Tether, as it is right now. And Use Crypto, so that is a priority for us. It actually is actively being worked on. I don't have a date. You will actually be able to choose whether you want to go from your bank account into USDC or your bank account into true USD. I don't have a date for that, but it is our goal to do that for you. Very common request. And so we will be bringing it to you. Laura says, she's approved, you're approved, but you can't deposit. So Laura, if you want to put your wallet ID in the thread here, there are folks from support and they can look at it for you and then send you either an email or a text. Let me get a drink here. This show flies by. It's unbelievable. I can't believe it's 9:40. Okay, so let's see. A bunch of questions about bank deposits. Let me bring up one thing. Let me go back to the app. I think I'm still sharing. Okay, so let me go back to the app, if Mr. Wizard, if I'm not on the screen. So why don't you bring up the app? I'm going to turn it on here. Okay, so if you go into the main menu for the app and you scroll down, you see at the bottom, it's like fourth row from the bottom, it says FAQs. This is really awesome. We've basically built a whole series of FAQs into the app itself on every major topic that the app supports, right? So if you press, let's see, depositing and withdrawing, see that in the middle, right? It basically tells you about all of the key ways for depositing and withdrawing in the app, using your bank account, using international banks, using certain local banks. Then at the same time, depending upon the country you're in, you see at the top where it says add money. I'm going to press add money. And this list of bank transfer, bank wire, deposit crypto, that's specific to me because I'm in the United States. Each of you, depending on the country you're in, is going to see a specific list to you. Okay. Some countries, for example, we support this idea of a cash teller, and we're expanding that network very quickly. And if you're in one of those countries, you'll see deposit cash via teller as an option in your app. Now, in the United States, we don't support cash tellers because there's no need, but you would see that option here. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And we're constantly looking to improve the way we add money and get money out of the app, right? So I'll go back to the screen. I'll press the withdrawal button at the top, and you see that today we support US ACH, bank wire, and withdraw via crypto in the US, and in other countries, there's other withdrawal options as well. Okay, so Mike asks, why is ACH so fast to deposit and so slow to withdraw? So Mike, this is a really good question. In actuality, ACH is just as slow to deposit as it is to withdraw. Let me explain. It takes 1 business day to process an ACH deposit. However, Abra is actually often crediting that money to your Abra wallet immediately, meaning we give you the money in your Abra app before we receive it from the bank. And we do that as a service to give you a better experience. However, when you withdraw, I can't credit the money to your bank account. I have no access to your bank account. Your bank is obviously not going to do that. So when you withdraw, it's up to the bank and the Fed that routes the ACH transaction to process the transaction to put the money in your bank account. So it actually takes the same amount of time to deposit and withdraw. It's just that on the deposit, we're giving you the money before we even get it from the bank. I hope that makes sense. All right. Universal Ninja asks, did I miss fingerprint login? No, you didn't miss it. We don't have it yet. Face ID and other forms of login, I believe, are in the plans, but I don't have any specific announcements for you there. The team usually pounds me into the ground if I say something wrong. So I'm sure they will here as well. Mongo asks, any plans for an interest earning Chainlink account? So that's a good question. I have not seen significant demand for Link in Abra Earn. But if I'm wrong on that, I would love to add it. I have a small amount of Link, and I would be very happy to stake that myself in Abra Earn and earn some free Link. Let's see. More questions. All right, let me turn off screen sharing here for a minute. And there were a couple of other items on my list. I got a couple of questions this week. People who are asking about Abra Earn and oh, by the way, so Mac was asking if there's going to be a limit feature. I think you're talking about trading, meaning can you do limit buys and limit sells? Mac, it's yes. Again, I'm sorry to keep saying this. We don't pre-announce features, but since you're asking here, I try to be transparent. Yes, it is a priority. I don't have an exact date for you, but we are going to do it. We're going to have limit and eventually market orders. It may not be for a few months, but it is in the plans. All right, so Abra Earn, how are you paying 8% interest when your competitors are paying 3 to 4% interest? So let me talk about that for a second. All right, I think that the single biggest benefit to Abra Earn is what I call responsible yield. What do I mean by responsible yield? Responsible yield means that you have a partner in Abra and Prime Trust, because your Abra Earn account is actually issued by Prime Trust, who's our partner and your account issuer, is responsibly managing this program in a way where you're making deposits and we are generating that yield for you by lending individual deposits or making individual loans into liquidity pools in the DeFi world, right? Or in some cases, lending to other consumers also responsibly, okay? All right, so responsible lending means that becoming an institutional borrower to Abra is actually a hard thing to do. You can't just sign up on Monday as an institution and be borrowing from Abra on Tuesday. It doesn't work that way. It actually takes several weeks to get onboarded as a borrower into Abra. We do a lot of financial due diligence. We look at the balance sheets of our borrowers. We check the existing loans outstanding they have in terms of what kind of leverage they have in their system. And then we determine what type of collateral requirements we're going to set on those loans, meaning if they're borrowing dollars, how much Bitcoin or Ethereum are we going to take as collateral? If they're borrowing Ethereum, how much Bitcoin are we going to take as collateral? And then that sets the rates and then the maximum amounts they can borrow, et cetera, et cetera. That process actually takes a few weeks for most new borrowers. Okay, and then once they're onboarded, we're constantly looking at their monthly and quarterly financials, making new decisions about their creditworthiness. It's not just a one-time process. If you get a mortgage on your house, right, you're basically done with the bank as long as you make your payments, right? If your creditworthiness changes and goes down, they can't take your mortgage away, right? As long as you make the payments. However, in our case, if we decide the creditworthiness of a borrower changes, we'll actually force them to repay the loan. It doesn't really happen very often. I don't think it maybe a couple of times, but we will do that, okay? And so there's a lot of risk management going on behind the scenes that doesn't happen if you're just blindly putting money into DeFi pools, for example, if you understand what I'm talking about in regards to DeFi, okay? On the DeFi side, right, DeFi is extremely complex. You have to look at code, right? Because effectively the banking system is being replaced with software. And we go into that code, right, via our teams and our partners, do code audits. We test with our own money first, often in small amounts, before we scale up, okay? So this is not a, hey, let's just spread the money around and figure it out, spray and pray strategy, right? There's significant amount of risk management that goes into this, all right? So I personally strongly prefer to trust money to a system like Abra Earn, where I know that there's adults at the wheel that are generating responsible yield for me, than to just blindly go after and chase double-digit yield with the potential to lose all of my principal. That's just not appealing to me. I'm already taking speculative risk on my Bitcoin. I don't want to put that Bitcoin at risk unnecessarily, so I trust Abrabarro. That's why I have all of my liquid Bitcoin in Abrabarro. Okay. All right. Abrabarro. Why is Abrabarro not available in my state? Okay. There are a few US states where we still have lending licenses pending because you are borrowing dollars. That is a regulated activity. All right. So we have to have either a lending license, or in some cases, we don't need a lending license if you're only able to borrow up to a certain amount or above a certain amount. And the Abra app configures that depending upon the state you're in. All right. So, so we had a user, for example, I think it was Michael was just asking about Washington. I see the support team responded. We will be turning on your state immediately once that lending license is in place. And our compliance and legal team is very actively working on getting all of the states turned on. Okay. So there's not many, but the few of them are the highly populated states, states such as California, where I live. And so, I want to use Abrabarro as well. And so hopefully I'll be able to use it very, very soon. And most of a lot of our employees and the exec team are here in California. So we're highly motivated because we also use Abrabarro. Most of the exec team has all of their liquid crypto and cash in Abrabarro. We can't borrow because we're in California. So it's a priority for us to get that lending license in California to be able to take advantage of the awesome features that we've built ourselves. And we actually used ourselves as the test case with Abrabarro, right? We built it for ourselves first, knowing that we want to use it, right? So in terms of being able to do as many withdrawals and deposits as you like with no restrictions, compounded daily interest, weekly interest payments on Monday mornings, that's the product we wanted. So we built it for ourselves, and we're building Abrabarro the same way. That's why we launched that zero interest rate option, because that's what we wanted. We said, how can we actually create a product that's so compelling, right? That if I need to access some cash off of my crypto gains, that it's a no-brainer to do it with Abra. That was our perspective in designing Abrabarro, the same way we designed Abrabarro. We wanted to use it ourselves. Okay, so we will get those states live, and it's not going to take much longer, I suspect. Can you comment on where you are with Stellar? Unfortunately not. There are some really cool things that we're talking about and working on with Stellar, but because if it was just Abra, I would be able to talk about it, but because it involves multiple parties, I am not at liberty to talk about it. Why is our cash held in true USD instead of USD? That is a great question. Okay, so I think it's Mac is the person who asked the question. Abra itself doesn't touch the banking system, meaning in regards to consumer funds, right? Whenever we are basically directing funds that you have in custody at one of our partners, it's always in crypto. So there's no banking system involved. When you come in via a bank wire, that wire is processed via Prime Trust, and it's immediately converted to a stable coin, so that in the system. All right. So that is what makes the trades happen in real time. It's what makes the ability to move money between trade and earn instant, because we're not moving money between banks. Right. So thank God we have crypto and stable coins to do this. And, right, if we didn't, it would be really slow. Okay, so we are adding more stablecoin support for bank deposits. I mentioned that earlier. You can deposit today in true USD, USDC, right, which is the most popular now outside of kind of the Binance world. We support Tether for those of you coming out of Binance, and we support the Pax dollar, which used to be called Paxos, and we support DAI. We don't support DAI for interest earning yet, I believe. I don't remember. Let me check. We do not, but we support it for deposits and withdrawals. And you can actually move between them in Abra Trade. You can trade between DAI and Tether, Tether and USDC. I wouldn't do it in large amounts because there's a bit of a spread. It's not us, it's the system, but you can do that. All right. So let's see. Tom says, I love your t-shirts. Seriously. Could you please share where you purchased them? So Tom, I don't have a lot of vices in my life. I'm not into a lot of fancy stuff, but I love these t-shirts. Most of the ones you see, I'm actually getting from Barbados. They're really expensive. Like I said, I don't have a lot of vices. I don't spend a lot of money on stuff, but I don't mind spending money on t-shirts. So if you see a lot of the peace signs, those are usually the symbol for Barbados, who's my favorite designer. And so it's my only vice. What could I tell you? But yeah, I definitely couldn't afford Barbados t-shirts when I was a kid. Okay. Use crypto today. Have you considered creating a debit card product? One of the challenges with putting money in Abra is limited access to the funds. Use crypto today. I could not agree more. That's all I'm going to say. I think it would be awesome. I set a goal for myself. You can go back and watch my interview with Peter McCormick. I think it was back in February when we talked about Bitcoin 50,000 or whenever it was, earlier this year, maybe April. I said my goal, my personal goal, was to be able to shut off my bank accounts by the end of this year. I can't do that unless I get paid, just like most of you get paid. I don't work for free. So my salary has to go somewhere, right? And so we don't support direct deposit yet, but if we did, guess what? So I don't know if we'll reach that goal by the end of this year, but it's coming. My goal at some point is to be able to turn off my bank accounts and just live via Abra from a banking system perspective. And that will happen or I will die trying. Okay. And I'm not going to die trying because it will happen. All right. So that's all I'm going to say for now. Let's see. Nigel asks, direct bank transfer withdrawals are only possible to the Philippines. No, that is not true. We support bank transfer withdrawals via wire all over the world. You can do, also we have local bank integrations in multiple countries. So just check in your Abra app. If you haven't done the KYC, which is know your customer ID upload, you won't be able to do it. Brenda asks, when will the debit cards be available? Brenda, I didn't say we were launching a debit card. I just said my goal is to turn off my other bank accounts, and you can decide for yourself what that means, because I don't want to give it away. Doug says Wyoming, right on. I love Wyoming. I think Wyoming could be an interesting part of Abra's future. We will see. So Doug, yes, direct deposit. That's what I'm talking about. It's one of the key features. And I'm not just talking about the US, right? I want Abra to be a global crypto bank, right? If we're not global, we're not adding enough value, right? We are not a US centric company. I've done business in 60 plus countries. I've lived in several countries. I've spent months at a time in Mexico, Philippines, Guatemala, Haiti. I ran a foundation in Haiti. I am super bullish on crypto changing banking globally. Okay. Doug, yeah, I share your pain on XRP. It is not our choice. If it was up to me, I would flip a switch and XRP would be available to all of us. I think the ship has sailed, regardless of whether Ripple was selling securities or not. Yeah, outside the US, no problem. Hopefully it'll be turned back on in the US soon. Okay, so let's see, one more question. I got to pick a good one here. Joe asks, any thoughts on an Abra, IRA, Roth, etc.? Joe, great question. Very common question. We get a lot of high net worth customers who use IRA, Roth products in the United States. We're looking very hard at it. It's very complicated. If you have a self-directed trust, you can actually use Abra today. We do support trust and business accounts. Send an email either to support at abra.com, support at abra.com, or you can also go to trading at abra.com and tell them that you want to get the forms for a business or trust account in the United States or anywhere in the world, actually. And we'll get you those business account forms. It's very simple. And in terms of specifically a consumer IRA, we're looking very hard at it. I think it's a really good idea. I think it would add a lot of value. And I think it should be a component of people's IRA and 401k accounts. just like it is for me in a personal wealth management perspective. I don't use those products because I want to be liquid, but I know a lot of people do, and they make a lot of sense in many cases. Okay. All right. It's 10 a.m. Pacific here, so I'm going to call it a day. Thank you, everyone, as always. We love you. Oh, Eddie, we are going to get New York worked out. I promise you, we're going to figure out New York. We are. My next meeting is on New York, so it's something that's actively being worked on. So stay tuned for that. Have a very safe weekend, healthy weekend. Have some fun with everything going on in Afghanistan. I've got family who are in the service. My cousin, my nephew, excuse me, serves in the Air Force. Love you, bud. Hope you're well. And I have other relatives that serve around the world. They're military. It's been a tough week. If you're in the military, my thoughts and prayers go out to all the veterans in the United States. We shouldn't be in a lot of these places in the first place, but thank God we have you doing what you're doing. In the meantime, have a great weekend. Looks like the Bitcoin pump is going to be fun. Let's see what happens in Sunday evening this week, and maybe it'll cooperate. But right now, it's looking reasonably bullish, and we'll see what happens. But so as I said, have a great weekend. Go Bitcoin, go Ethereum, go Cardano, and we will see you next week on Money Talks. Thanks, everyone.